Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sunday, April 13th, 2025, around 1 p.m. Central Standard Time in Champaign, Illinois. You're watching Co-op for Two. This afternoon, we're reading the third letter in a case, in a story written by one of our viewers, Anna, set in a little bit after the Civil War. We'll do a little recap in a second, but let me just check in with the chat, see how everyone's doing, what everyone's up to. I feel like I'm recovering from a poisoning attempt, self-poisoning attempt last night. I had some friends over. We did a little Black Mirror marathon and watched all of the new Black Mirror season and ate a lot of snacks and salt and chocolate, and now I'm feeling the effects of it. It does feel a lot like a poisoning attempt. But Black Mirror was good. Not my favorite season, but some good episodes. I wonder if anyone else has watched it yet. Anything else to catch up on before we get started? So, I downgraded the streaming bandwidth because we were getting a little bit of buffering. So hopefully the stream is clear. The Case of the Poison Chocolates in Real Life. That's right. Case of the Poison Chocolates, one of my favorite little books that Jonathan Warner, another viewer on the channel, read as part of his mystery group. All right, Anna is here. Everyone is online. YouTube says 16 concurrent viewers. All right, so let's do a little bit of a recap of where we are in the story. This third letter will be our final letter laying out the facts of the case. The fourth letter will be the solution. In the second letter from last week, we got mostly a historical telling of the life of our dead person here, Sarah's husband, Francis Davis. But before we got this long story of his history and his political rivalry with these couple suspects, we got the police officer's report, which I do want us to take another look at, because we finally got some details here. Body discovered lying behind tall bushes, so brought out of the way. That's why people didn't notice it. His clothes were torn and dirty in places, which could suggest he fought with his killer. This is a fact we don't really know how quite to make sense of. Remember, this is based on a true story. So in a true story, sometimes there are facts that are not easily resolvable, maybe never resolved fully, but this police officer says maybe that's because he fought with his killer. Then we get some more details here. Hit probably from behind with a small object, small, probably metal object. It could have been a paperweight, the butt of a revolver, or something similar. We do have a missing revolver in this case, but we also have mention of a cane, which I think this feels consistent with. Not mentioned explicitly, but small metal cane could have done it. More testimony from witnesses. One here's an argument a little bit past 7, which matches our timeline. And then here's more details about the person walking away, seen walking away with the cane. A man limping hurriedly, 7:45. She could only give a vague description. Dark suit, hat pulled over his face, leaning on his walking stick. Maybe he had a beard. Then our police officer checked for alibis. We get the two generals said they were at the club, but actually that's not true. And then Elsie Potts, who's the sister's husband, who's violent, but I don't think he's got a good motive, but you never know. And then the other guy who said he was at a going away party, they're still waiting to check out his alibi. All right, and then we get the long story of Francis's history, fighting in the Civil War and then starting a paper and making some political enemies. The most interesting thing here is this little note. General Doyle and Goodwin, who are his enemies and who called him out to duel, at least one of them, is now finally described as having a limp and a cane. Goodwin, a race-baiting politician, walking around limping, crushing his cane proudly. This is huge. This, to us, to me, feels like this is our primary suspect now. Now, one very interesting point we talked about at length is motive. These are all sort of good old boys of the South, politician, general, and we're told he called him out for a duel and waited outside his house with the gun, and he never showed up. And when we talked to him, he says that settled the matter. This guy isn't even a man to me because he didn't accept my challenge of a duel. And our guy Francis has been sort of, his reputation has been ruined. His paper has been financially bankrupt. So what we were talking about is then there's no more motive. Like, you've shamed him, you've challenged him to a duel, your honor is restored. He refused to duel. He didn't show up, our guy Francis, so he's been shamed and he's been bankrupted. Why do anything more? Why would you kill him? There's no need. You've already won. But we get this very interesting little detail here at the end. So here he is saying, it's all closed. I challenged him to a duel. He never showed up. I won. Okay. But then we get this little detail. Remember, Francis is going, his newspaper is going bankrupt. And here we're told that there's a little twist. He says, this is his friend saying, the last time I talked to him, he was troubled. We all were because of the finances. But Francis told us we didn't have to resort to selling the paper because I'm thinking about writing, he says, Francis, an expose about someone. Although he wasn't ready to tell me who the expose was about. Now we've got a real, genuine motive for whoever the expose was going to be about. And it would be consistent with having a loud argument resulting in a fight and death. So you could imagine that he's about to write an article ruining someone, accusing someone of something, corruption, malfeasance, whatever. And did he get into an argument with this person in the park? And when he turned around to leave, this person hit him in the back of the head, fearing that if they didn't, this article was going to come out ruining him. And that, for someone high up in society, a general, a politician, that could ruin him. So to me, it feels like if we can connect this expose to possibly this general with the limp, that's going to do it. That would be our prime suspect. We're hoping to hear from the assistant who lived upstairs. He is also a suspect, although we don't have a good motive for him. We wonder if he didn't steal a gun, though. But he wouldn't be a person you would write an expose about. So my thoughts are still with this general. Anything else to talk about, to recap, before we get into the new letter here? I suspect today we're going to hear from the brother-in-law has moved away. The violent brother has moved away. Some of the people in the channel still think it's likely to be him, but I don't think so. I don't think that kind of person would try to break in the house to get at his wife, but wouldn't be killing our guy Francis in a park by hitting him at the back of the head. So for me, the chief suspect is whoever he was writing the expose about, who I think must be the limping general, or the guy upstairs. There's something else going on that that we don't know yet, but hopefully we're going to hear from him today. Nothing else from the chat. No other details that I didn't cover. As a reminder, we'll get our last letter today. Next week, we'll go over the solution, and the week after that, we will return to our Dear Holmes cases. All right, the channel is quiet, quiescent. All right, let's read the letter then, if there's nothing else. Don't know why the channel is so quiet. Melissa says, I think the expose has to do with the killing of the boys. Okay, don't know what you're talking about. That's okay. All right, let's get started here. Dear Mr. Reichler, here we have April 5th. My sister Sarah mentioned to you in her last letter that I'll be writing my own account of my brother-in-law's murder, or at least of all the circumstances I have knowledge of and could be relevant in this case. I also typed up the statements of the members of our household, which you can read on the following pages. I put my own letter at the end. I managed to convince Sarah to leave the business of letter writing to me this week, so I was able to post all these testimonies and my letter without her reading them, which was necessary in order to be able to tell you the whole truth. If we really want to find Francis's killer, I think we need to face all of the facts, not just the ones we find convenient or proper. I hope you'll agree with me, Mr. Reichler. Firstly, here are all the testimonies I gathered in the last 2 weeks. Okay, Miriam is the sister of the wife, and she's also the secretary to our guy, and she is writing us today. Okay, here's the testimony of Mr. Alan Brody. I can't think of anything I could say about Mr. Davis's death. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary that day. Mr. Davis went for a walk not long before 7 p.m., but he didn't come home. I know he had money problems lately, but he paid us first thing every month. I can only say I'm truly sorry about his death. He was a good man and a good employer indeed. Testimony of Mrs. Julia Brody. It's a horrible thing that happened to the master. I don't know what the world will come to if good men like Mr. Davis are murdered. I'll bet it was one of those scoundrels who wanted to duel the master before, as the mistress says. Both of them insulted poor Mr. Davis more than once, but the master was a truly devoted Catholic, God bless his soul, so he wouldn't want to shed anyone's blood, not even such murdering scoundrels' blood as those two generals at that shooting club. I can only add that the master was very troubled in the last couple of months, but it was understandable after all those people tried to dirty his name. All his former friends and acquaintances turned away from poor Mr. Davis. It is shameful, I tell you that. Not the dear doctor, of course. I always thought him a real gentleman and a true friend of the family. It's true, we didn't see Dr. McCormick for a while after Mr. Davis's death, or even the week before that, to think of it. But it turned out he had an accident not long before the master was killed. He fell down the stairs in his home, so he couldn't give his condolences in person for a long time. But he wrote to the mistress as soon as he heard the tragic news, and he visited her a few days ago to provide some moral support to the family in these hard times. He still had a few light bruises on his face, so I could only imagine how awful his fall must have been. Oh boy, I think we may have a whole different thing going on here based on these first two letters, first two pages. So in our first letter, we're told about the family friend, the doctor, who cares for the kids. And at the time we remarked, like, why are we hearing about this doctor? Is it going to turn out now that the doctor is having an affair with the wife? And there was a confrontation between Francis and the doctor, and they fought, and the doctor ended up killing him? And now the doctor has stayed away, and he's all bruised up from the fight, and now he's trying to get back with the wife? Is this a more traditional tale of jealousy and affairs? Well, here's the testimony of Miss Susan Milton. It's very hard to talk about Mr. Davis. He was a very good man, and I still can't believe someone murdered him. Our world is becoming a horrible place indeed if someone as good as him can end so horribly. He always defended the weak, and he stood by his principles regardless of the consequences. I truly admired him. He treated every servant as part of his family, as people who were under his care. He once said to me, I know I'm not a father to you, Susan, but if you need help with anything, you can always come to me as if I was one. And I know he said the same to Mademoiselle Helene when she came to us. The mistress told me to talk about the master's gun. In this testimony, I only know the master still had his pistol from the war. He kept it in his drawer in the study. I tried to clean it once, but he said I needn't bother with it because he didn't ever intend to use it. It wasn't even loaded, he said, and he didn't have any ammunition left. I told this to that officer as well, who searched the whole house the other day and didn't find any revolver anywhere. I also told him Mr. Davis seemed very troubled on his last day, but this was sadly true on most days during his last month, so I didn't pay too much attention to his bad mood, although I was very sorry for it and I wished I could help him somehow. But of course I couldn't do much more than serve him fresh tea more often than usual. I did see him rifling through his drawers the last time I took his tea to his study on the day he died. It was not long before he left the house. Here's the testimony of Mademoiselle Helene LeBlanc. Mr. Davis was a very kind man and a good employer. We were all truly shocked when we heard about his death. I hope the police will catch his killer soon. And here's David Reed, the guy who lived upstairs. I don't see the point of this testimony. I've already talked to the police. You can ask them. He doesn't want to talk to us. So these were the testimonies I collected. As you can see, Mr. Reichler, some are more useful than others. Now I need to write down my own testimony. Here's the testimony of Mrs. Miriam M. Potts. As my sister told you in her letter, I became part of Francis's household last summer when I sought refuge from my violent husband. At least I thought it would be only a temporary solution because my parents would help me get rid of Alcee after I told them everything. I was bitterly disappointed in that regard. But Francis said I can stay with them indefinitely. He was very kind and promised to shelter me not only from Alcee, but the gossip of the town as well, if it became necessary. He said he thought of me as part of his own family, and for whose welfare he was responsible from that day onwards. He even offered me a job as his secretary, just so I could feel useful around the house. Sarah asked me to help her with the education of the children, and I happily obliged, of course. I truly adore dear Ethel and Leslie, although it was a bit awkward at first with Mademoiselle Helene, the governess also being with them all the time. I think at first Helene was afraid she might lose her job because of me, but when she realized that wasn't the case, we came to an understanding, and worked together on educating the children. Alcee didn't give up very easily, of course. He appeared regularly at the house in the first few months to bring me back home with him, as he put it. At first he was remorseful and pleaded with me. Later on he became threatening and volatile. Francis was always there, of course, and he didn't let things go too far before he kicked his brother-in-law out of the house. Alcee even went to my parents to ask them to argue in his favor. I'm sad to say they obliged, but Francis fortunately helped me to deal with them as well. I know the police considered Alcee as a possible suspect for the murder, and if it had happened a couple of months earlier, I think I too would have suspected him. But now he seems an unlikely suspect to me. We haven't seen him for 2 months now, so I think he's accepted the fact that I would never return to him. We can't rule him out entirely, of course. I learned the hard way. People are capable of things one wouldn't have thought possible before. There are a few more things I wanted to tell you about. Firstly, about Mr. Reed, Francis's assistant. I know Sarah told you he's lived in the attic for more than 2 years now, a fact I always found very strange. He's not like the other servants, obviously, because he worked for the paper and not technically for Francis. So giving him a room for so long seemed very eccentric, even from my good-hearted brother-in-law. I know Sarah found it strange as well, not to mention a little awkward. I know she talked to Francis about this, but it didn't seem to change anything. I think you know that Mr. Reed wasn't here on the day Francis died. He only came home after 9 or so that night. Sarah said Francis was looking for him that afternoon, so it seems my brother-in-law also wasn't aware of where Reed went that day. I overheard a conversation the previous day, or at least a few sentences between them, which I found very odd indeed. Mostly the tone which Mr. Reed used with Francis during those few sentences. He shouted, "You've never cared about me at all. I won't stay in this house anymore." I was shocked that a young assistant could talk to his boss in that manner, but more shocked when I heard Francis answering it in a calm, conciliatory tone. "David, please, don't start again." I didn't want to eavesdrop, so I went to my room, but as I said, I was very surprised by all this. When Mr. Reed finally arrived that day, Officer Fox was still in the house. So he was the one who told Reed the news. He became as white as a sheet, collapsed into a chair, and just sat there like a ghost. When I asked him later about the conversation I accidentally overheard, he pretended that he didn't know what I was talking about. He moved out a few days later without even saying goodbye. This also seems very odd to me, not to mention ungrateful. I asked Officer Fox about Mr. Reed a few days ago, and it turns out the police hadn't been able to verify his alibi. The claim that he was visiting his sick aunt the day Francis died. Officer Fox also gave me Reed's new address. I visited the former assistant at his new lodgings yesterday to ask him for a statement, but he wasn't too cooperative. To tell you the truth, I became very angry at him and accused him of being ungrateful after all that Francis had done for him in the past. We started arguing, and he finally admitted he hadn't visited any aunt that day, but was at a job interview at the Journal of Commerce. I was shocked to hear about the extent of his ingratitude, but that miserable excuse for a man went even further. He defended himself by accusing Francis of all sorts of things. He said Francis owed him much more than that uncomfortable little attic room. He also threatened to unveil some very inconvenient truths about my late brother-in-law if I continued this harassment, as he put it. Can't imagine what the little coward meant by all that, but I had had enough of him, so I left without a useful statement. I didn't see Francis on the day he died because I was with the children until supper, so I'm afraid I can't tell you anything useful about his last day. But there is one last important thing I feel I need to tell you about, which happened a week before Francis's death. I know my sister already told you about the children's physician, Mr. McCormick. And I know she was very complimentary about him. She told you how attentive he was to the children all the time and how he became a friend of the family over the last 3 years, spending 1 or 2 evenings here every week. Well, in a way, this is true. I believe he is a good physician, but the reason for his frequent visits are less noble than my dear sister thinks. It's very uncomfortable to talk about these things, of course, not to mention unseemly in our circles. That's why I only brought it up to Francis as a last resort. I tried everything else previously, but nothing worked. You see, Mr. Reichler, Dr. McCormick seized every opportunity when he and I were alone, even for a moment, to get close to me. Well, indecently close, I mean. And although I was very clear about not wanting this kind of attention at all, he became more and more insistent, trying to grab me or kiss me or whisper indecent proposals into my ear. It became truly unbearable, so in the end I decided to tell Francis about it. I talked to him a week before his death. He was shocked, naturally, but said I didn't have to worry about it anymore, because he would take care of it. The next day, he only told me that we needed to find another physician for the children, because Dr. McCormick wouldn't be coming back anymore. I begged him not to tell Sarah anything yet, because I wanted to be the one to tell my sister. I had no idea how to start, of course. I felt horrible that I had to deprive the children of their doctor whom they loved. I didn't get a chance to talk to Sarah in the end. Francis died and everything turned so dreadful. We lost the head of our family and were struck with grief. Dr. McCormick sent a note to express his condolences and to tell us he had an accident a few days earlier, so he wouldn't be able to come to us in person for a while. He visited us a few days ago, though, but he behaved like a gentleman for once and didn't try to catch me alone or anything like that. Maybe I won't have to tell my sister about him after all. That would be a relief. Times are hard enough around here nowadays, and Sarah needs all her friends. As for those horrible men who tried to duel Francis, and one of whom Sarah therefore thinks must be the killer, I'm afraid I can't say anything useful. I know Bart has already told you everything he knows about them. We only knew those men from Francis and Bart's accounts, and of course we've seen them a few times around town and in front of the house. About Francis's gun, I can only tell you this. My brother-in-law had a revolver which he stored in his desk drawer in the study, and the police couldn't find it when they searched the house. We all knew how Francis detested violence and fought against it for more than a decade, so it seems very unlikely to me that he took the gun with him on his last day when he went to the park. Unless he wanted to scare someone, maybe. I don't know. I think that's all I needed to tell you, Mr. Reichler. I hope you'll be able to make use of this information and tell us who is responsible for dear Francis's death. All our hopes are in you now, because the police don't seem to be able to continue the investigation. Sincerely, Mrs. Miriam Potts. P.S. I was about to seal the envelope when Helene came to me and said she wanted to change her testimony after all. See, Mr. Reichler, I had knowledge of things which I asked her to share with you before, or at least let me share them. I even promised her that Sarah wouldn't see any of these letters, but Helene was too afraid, and she begged me not to say a word about anything concerning her, so I didn't. But now you can read it in her own words. I'm happy she decided to be brave after all and tell you the whole truth. All right, so we have testimony from Helene now. Second testimony of Mademoiselle Helene LeBlanc. Miss Miriam asked me to share these shameful things with you, Mr. Reichler. At first I thought I couldn't do it, although she and the mistress thinks you are the only one who can work out who killed poor Mr. Davis. But in the end, I decided to tell you everything after all. I'm trying to get her accent right. As these shameful things concern Dr. McCormick, the dear children's doctor. I know Miss Miriam has already told you about the doctor's advances toward her because she told me of it as well, and asked me if the doctor had behaved improperly toward me also. At first I denied that any such thing could have ever occurred, but later I told her everything. How the doctor has been hounding me since the day he first came to the house. It was terrible. I didn't know what to do. I am only a servant, and I know that in cases like these, the servant is always the one who has to leave if these things ever come to light. And I truly like this family. I love the children, and the master and the mistress were the best employers I ever had. So I only tried to stay out of the doctor's way and make sure I was never alone with him. But I fear I was not always successful. When Miss Miriam came to us, I saw the doctor eyeing her as the same way he eyed me. So I suspected he was harassing her as well. But I didn't have the courage to broach the subject, not even after Miss Miriam and I became very friendly. Only when she asked me outright whether the doctor was harassing me as well did I finally break down and tell her everything. Even about my plan to leave this house if something didn't change shortly. She was very kind about it and told me I didn't have to worry anymore because she would talk to the master about this, but I begged her not to mention me. We didn't see the doctor for days after she talked to Mr. Davis. I was relieved because I thought the whole thing had ended at last, and I had even managed to keep my job. Then something happened. It was the day before the master died. I was taking the children on a walk when we ran into Dr. McCormack, not far from the house. He greeted the children and asked how they were. Ethel and Leslie were very excited to see the doctor and asked him to come inside, but he only said he had to hurry to a patient, so he couldn't come in. And then he seized my hand as if he just wanted to shake it as a goodbye, but in fact he pushed a note into it. I didn't know what to do. So after we stepped inside and the children ran to their room, I opened the folded paper. It said that I must meet the doctor the next evening at 7 in the park, behind the tall bushes. Otherwise, he would tell Mr. Davis how I had flirted with him and behaved like a wanton woman every time I remained alone with him. I was so shocked and terrified I fell to the floor and started crying. That's when the master found me. He helped me up and asked me what had happened. I was so desperate at that moment that I showed him the note and told him everything the doctor had done before. He seemed very angry, but he told me I don't need to worry about anything. He said he knew I wasn't the one to blame and that I could forget about this awful note and the doctor as well, because he would make sure nothing like this ever happened to me or to any woman the doctor might meet in the future. I am sorry I haven't told anyone about this before, but I'm so ashamed and also terrified. Especially now, after the doctor came to the house a few days ago, though I couldn't see him that day. I told the mistress I had a headache, so I could remain in my room while he was here. I'm still not sure But I can talk about these things with the mistress, let alone the police. I hope, Mr. Reckler, you will tell me I won't have to, because it has nothing to do with the master's murder. I hope to God it is so. Well, it does. It does seem to have to do with the master's murder, doesn't it? All right, there's the end of our third letter, and it sure seems like we've got all of the pieces pointing to the doctor now. So I thought that it was going to turn out that the doctor was having the affair with the wife, but it doesn't seem like it. In fact, maybe the doctor is having a homosexual relationship with Mr. Reed upstairs, or Mr. Reed is his son, and that's why he owes him. Like, they're talking weirdly. Reed is like, you owe me. You never cared about me. I won't stay in this house anymore. How could a young assistant talk to his boss? David, please don't start again. So is he like an illegitimate son? Seems like it. Either that or a homosexual lover, but more likely illegitimate son. Yeah, okay. So he's not our suspect. He's just threatening to tell information. It makes sense that you can't really reveal that you're the homosexual lover, but you could reveal that you're an illegitimate son. Threaten to unveil some very inconvenient truths, like that he sired someone out of wedlock. All right, so I think that explains what's going on with Mr. Reed. Now, and then we've got the doctor who's been staying away because he's injured, had an accident, says he. And then we get this whole story about how Helene confided in Mr. Davis that the doctor was threatening her, and the doctor was this lecherous person approaching the sister as well. And Francis finds out about it and is going to confront him. And not only that, it was the day before the master died. So the day before he died at 7 p.m. in the park, she gets a note from the doctor saying to meet her at 7 in the park, behind the tall bushes, exactly where our guy is killed, on the night that the doctor tells her that she has to meet him exactly where our guy was killed. So we can see what's happened here. Davis has gone to confront the doctor in place of the pretty French mademoiselle, and probably maybe this is even the subject of his planned expose, although I'm not sure he knew about it ahead of time to be planning an expose on him. But he obviously confronted the doctor. They got into a scuffle and he was killed. So we've returned back to the old original theory that the limping away is because he got injured then and there. It's not an old limp, but that probably means, like, why does he have a walking cane? Maybe that's totally unrelated. Maybe the witness seeing someone with a walking cane is a red herring. Maybe our guy Francis did bring his gun to threaten him, and he got it away from him and hit him, or maybe the doctor walks with a walking cane even though he doesn't have a limp until they fought. But clearly it's the doctor. The only thing we don't know the details of is did he hit him with his walking stick, or did he take the gun out of his hand and hit him, and where is the gun? But probably the son just stole the gun. Probably Mr. Reed is the illegitimate son and took the gun. Although you could imagine it here. You could imagine he brought the gun just to scare him, and he took the gun out of his hand, they fought, and he hit him at the back of the head. No, the doctor wouldn't know the location of the gun. It would be that the gun was brought by Francis to the park to scare the doctor, and they had a scuffle over it, and the doctor grabbed it from him and used it to hit him on the head, and then kept it. Could the expose have been about the doctor? That's what I was thinking, but we're told from this that he only found out about Mademoiselle the night before. The only question is whether the sister, I'm trying to remember whether the sister talked to him about the doctor earlier, a week before Francis's death. I didn't see Francis on the day he died. When does the sister tell him about the doctor? She says, he's a good physician, but he's been approaching me. That's why I only brought it up to Francis as a last resort. So she does tell Francis about it a week ahead of time. So 1 week ago, she tells Francis. A week before his death, he was shocked. So he did know about it. He didn't know about it a week ahead of time. So depending on when the expose was mentioned, as to my friend's last days, I saw, if you recall, I had dinner with you a few days. So the expose, this discussion about expose was few days before death. So it's certainly possible that the sister tells him about the doctor a week ago, and he decides he's going to write an expose about the doctor. Yeah, we could look at, in the very first letter, we are told about the doctor. We absolutely are, but it's done very briefly. Regular visitor, Dr. McCormick, the children's physician. That's all. He was a bit player in the beginning, but now it's clear he's the key player of this one. All right, so I think we know it's the doctor. Does anyone, I guess for me, the only open questions are whether the expose was about the doctor and how he was killed and where the gun is. Does anyone, I mean, we can discuss it again and at the next letter before we learn the answer to these. But does anyone have any guesses about whether the expose, what's your intuition tell you? We don't have hard evidence about it, but what does your intuition tell you about whether the expose was going to be about the doctor, and what's the wrap up of how was he killed? Was he killed with a cane? Was he killed with the butt of the gun that he brought? And does the doctor have the gun? So he's gone in place of the girl to meet the doctor to confront him. And he tells him, I'm about to write an expose on you. You are ruined. You are totally ruined. You threatened my mistress. You tried to sleep with the sister. And they get into a scuffle. So I'm going to say that he was actually killed with his own gun and that they got into an actual scuffle. We talked about how his dirty, messed up clothing suggests that he might have been in a fight. And we know now the doctor got injured and had to claim he fell down a stairs. So I think they got into an actual scuffle, maybe over the gun, which had no ammunition in it, but I think the doctor brought just to scare him. I think he looked into him. He was going to expose him. He was probably acting like that to all the ladies. Do we get in? I think the expose was going to be about the doctor, and the gun may be in his medical case. Um, I don't know what the comment about the medical case is. Are you saying there was some scene where he showed up unexpectedly with the medical case? I do think that it's likely that Francis brought the gun to scare him. They fought over it. The doctor got it and hit him on the back of the head with it. I don't know what this nonsense is about medical case, though. The injury was the same day as the murder. Yes, I believe that's right. I believe that he's just said I can't visit because I fell downstairs, but really the falling downstairs is just how he's explaining being all bruised up from the fight. Yes, I understand the concept of a doctor carrying a medical bag. My only point is where are you getting this idea that he's concealing the gun in a medical bag? And are you saying there's some scene where we see him walk out of some room with it and that's where you think he's concealing it? Like, I don't know why you're going there. We don't have any need for him to hide anything. He's just gotten into a fight. He's grabbed the gun away, hit him on the back of the head with it, whether on purpose, whether he meant to kill him or not. Uh, and then whatever. He's put the gun in his pocket and left the scene, or put it in his medical bag if he had it with him, regardless. All right, it seems like there's a little bit of a consensus here that the expose was going to be about the doctor. And I sounds like we're all on the same page that this man who swore to be a pacifist did bring the gun to threaten the doctor, and they got into a scuffle about it, and that he was hit on the back of the head with the gun, not with his cane. But we do think that the witness seeing him limping out with a cane means he did walk around with a cane. You're just saying for proof you could find blood on the gun. Well, I guess if they found the gun in his possession, blood or not, that would be pretty damning. But you're right, you could look for blood there. Is there any other? And we all think that Reed is an illegitimate son. There's no... I'm just trying to think if we ever heard the doctor described as having a cane. I don't think the doctor was ever described as having a walking stick or cane. Certainly would be interesting if he did. But I don't think we did. Not that that means all that much. The fact that the gun is missing points to it most likely being the weapon, not the cane. Yes, I think that's right. Unless it was just taken by the son and is totally unrelated to our case. Most people don't fight turned around. I think you're remarking about the fact that he was hit on the back of the head. So yeah, you could imagine a struggle, a scuffle, they fall to the ground, and then the doctor is behind him, grabs the gun, and hits him on the back of the head. So we have sort of a double motive for the murder. Like it wasn't a premeditated murder. That's the other thing I guess we can say, that it probably wasn't premeditated. Like we thought someone must have ambushed him in the park, but we don't think that's the case anymore. We think that our guy Francis went to the park to meet up with a doctor who thinks he's meeting with the French governess. So it was heat of the moment, fight, confrontation, and an unpremeditated killing. All right, well, we can think about this between now and next week. We'll talk about it a little bit more next week before we open the solution. I see we have some crazy theories at the end. All right, so I'll see you next Sunday at 1 p.m. when we'll discuss and then read the solution. If you want to discuss it a little more, there's always the Discord channel. I'm sure we will be playing something this week, but it's not yet determined what. If you want to help decide, you can stop by the Board Game Geek Guild for this channel. There's a link on the YouTube page. There's a little thread called the Game Queue where we discuss what games to play next. I'll see some of you there. Otherwise, for the rest of you, next week, 1 p.m., we'll read the solution.